possibly go to.
Yeah, I mean, she just.
Why you write checks. Good evening, everybody. My name is Pete Berube. I'm the chairperson of the Millis Finance Committee. Tonight is Wednesday, March 1st. I'll call the meeting to order, and I'll start off with just letting the committee members introduce themselves, as I neglected to do that last week. Starting with Kathy, thank
Kathy
you.
McInnes.
John Stedman.
Peter Underhill.
John Lohr.
Jody Garzon.
Mike Crone.
Sarah Reyes.
Joyce Boyardi.
Okay, very good. And then the obligatory, please, if you're going to speak, please step to the mic, state your name and your address. And really, I always like to encourage people to get right up close to the mic. It helps with those that are viewing at home. It helps for the video recording. I think the only one that they've said is too loud is usually me, because I'm right at the mic, but trying to set the example. So without further ado, I'm going to invite Chris Fogarty to come forward. She's going to give us the 2024 Recreation Department budget presentation.
Good evening, Chris Fogarty, Recreation Director, 86 Forest Road, Millis. I'm here to present the budget for 2024 for the Millis Recreation Department. I'm going to go as fast as possible so that we're,
No, there were no
time.
rush, so
Okay,
please
okay. Just some highlights from last year. As you know, we won Agency of the Year for the program outreach for Project Smile. We've also introduced the Millis Recreation Serves, our newly established community service platform for local Millis and high school students. We've recorded over 400 volunteer hours to date, as well as 75 students that are involved, and participated in over 22 community events. Some of the highlights on top of that are the Thanksgiving Feast Challenge food drive that was in November to benefit the Millis Food Pantry, and we were able to donate over 550 individual food items that were collected. We also installed the soundproofing for the pickleball courts, and a huge thank you to the DPW staff for their hard work on this project. We also were able to complete the courts over the Welch courts, John Welch, who gave us a donation to set up a few basketball courts. It's located over in the courtyard where the bus, or the vans park their buses at the town hall. Well, not town hall, but the Clyde Brown parking lot. The department goals for FY '24 are to continue Project Smile 2.0, which, as you guys are aware, we had Project Smile back in 2020, where we were able to put a bunch of murals around town so people could do their, go in front of them and take selfies and post them. It was just getting outside and promoting well-being and just taking a walk and enjoying the fresh air. We also expanded the team programming and service opportunities for our town, as well as we are focusing on more adaptive and inclusive programming through the Recreation Department. Currently, we are requesting the level funded for $78,060 for the director and the assistant director, well, the department assistant salaries, and $56,789 for supplies and expenses, for a total of $134,858, and that would be level funded.
I'm just going to ask you to pause for 1 second so we can look, we can find that.
I skipped over the budget narrative and went to the level funded page. Again, I was like, I want to just get it all out there.
Okay, I've finally caught up, so that's
Okay,
good.
sorry.
So we're in the first green column on the spreadsheet.
Yes.
Hopefully everybody's there. Okay, and Chris, I don't want to jump ahead, but I did read the meeting materials where there was a request for additional hours. So so that's your level funded budget, but in addition to that, there is another, an above level, above service level
Yes,
request,
sir.
right? Okay.
Yep.
Does anybody have any questions before Chris goes to that? Any questions on the level service budget? Sounds like none, okay.
Perfect, okay. So now we will go to the above level request. I have two requests in this year's budget. The first is to increase the director position to 37 and a half hours. I'm currently at 35 hours. The director position for the Recreation Department is salaried at 35 hours. The programs and events that are held during regular work hours in addition to evenings, weekends, and holidays to accommodate the public. The position does not allow for overtime, so by increasing the hours to 37 and a half, which is 2.5 hours per week, would allow for fair compensation. That total would be $4,754.10. My second request would be to increase the supplies and expense line item by $40,000. I've broken it down. So we were currently given $56,789 for FY 2023. Right now, the actual expenses to date are $71,000. That's exceeding, and we're over budget by $14,000 as of March 1st. The estimated need for spring programs for expenses is $15,000. So you take the $15,000, the $14,000 that we currently already owe is $29,000. But then I also budgeted in an additional $10,000 just to cover, we have winter invoices that have not come in yet. And if we go into like the 2024 season, it ends June 30th. So I'll have expenses to go in there before July 1st. So I just budgeted in an additional $10,000, which would make it $40,000. The revolving fund was estimated in FY 2023 and replaced with the supplies and expense line item in the amount of $56,789. I believe the figure was based on revenue from 2020, which was a pandemic year. This is about half of what the Recreation Department needs in order to function. Currently, the Recreation Department revenue and expenses are falling back into sync with pre-pandemic numbers. The challenge would be making sure that the budget is adjusted properly moving forward. And I am working with the town administrator to increase this amount based on the current expectation for 2024. So the total above-level service would be $44,754. Any questions? I know it's a lot. I kind of went through kind of quickly, but
I have a couple questions. I'll venture forward, and then I'm sure there will be others. The request to fund the rec department out of the general fund and not the revolving fund, can you give us a little background, just refresh our memory? Because as I recall it, that was recommended by the department and potentially by the committee, by the rec committee, and put forward by the select board as part of their budget. We discussed it, voted on it. I don't think we were unanimous, but you know, can you just give us a little bit of background? Not all of us were on the finance committee last year, and we have received some correspondence from the rec committee chair that not everybody on the committee probably has had a chance to review. If they haven't, they certainly will. But could you give us, you know, your insight on that?
sure, absolutely. So the Recreation Department had a special revenue fund, and the town picked up half of the director's salary, when then the revolving fund would pick up everything else. The rest of the director's salary, department assistant, it actually changed to a 53.5, which then also included benefits on top of that. And then paying for any program we had, any supplies, all of that. What we had been asking for in the past was to switch it to a 53D, which that is, it's a revolving fund, but then the salaries are picked up by the town. This is pretty much how 98% of all recreation departments are funded, either by a revolving fund, the 53D, an enterprise fund, or a 53E.5. Any self-funded recreation department that covers every cost, I've done research, again, this has been many years of research and, reaching out. The only towns that are actually self-funded with just a revolving fund are Worcester, New Bedford, large communities. So for Millis to be doing this, yes, and very grateful that half the salary was picked up. For Millis to actually be doing and functioning how they've been doing for the past 20 years is a miracle. So, and I am very appreciative for everybody's support, but we've been trying to get to the point where the funding is through the town on top of a revolving fund. So I think that that's what the chair was trying to communicate. Some people say it's like having your cake and eating it too, but it's not. You're funded, and then you have a revolving fund, so where you don't have to come to the town and ask for money. It's a revolving fund, and then any monies left over, say with the 53D, gets turned back to the town, and left with like $10,000 to keep going through each season.
Ms. Boyardi?
Where does the money for the revolving fund come from?
From the fees,
From the fees?
yes.
So, of all the programs, it goes into a revolving fund?
Yes.
Okay. And so how much, and of that revolving fund, you're asking to retain how much? Or you want to keep the revolving fund year after year? I'm a little confused. I did speak with your chair, and it made sense when he was trying to speak to me on it, but not complete, so.
So a 53D, it's all the funds come into that revolving fund and then pay for everything, not salaries. And then anything left over at the end of the year gets turned back to the town, except for 10,000.
Okay, and that 10,000 is so that if anything comes up during the
Yes, it
summer?
just keeps
or the-
going, yes.
Okay,
Yep.
keeps you alive,
Mhm.
so that you're not coming back to the town asking
Right,
for more
right.
money.
Right.
It makes sense.
Mr. Chair,
Go ahead, I'm sorry, Mr. Stedman.
what are you projecting in receipts into the revolving fund for this year and next year?
Okay, so a couple of numbers. Right now, currently, as of March 1st, we have deposited $115,000 into the town budget. Because now we don't have a revolving fund. It's like a budget. So anything we get, we turn it back over, it goes into the general fund. So to date, $115,000 on top of, hold on, plus another $5,000 for, so basically, right now, we have 120. I would anticipate, and also, look in your packet, there should be 11 years' worth of receipts.
The table looks like this.
Yes, Yep.
There we go.
Okay.
I know I see it.
So, I mean, you can't count 2020, really, but everything else, that's a breakdown of what we received, what we paid out. What do I anticipate? I anticipate we are going to exceed every other year in the past, because we have such awesome programs right now, plus we're gonna bring back the carnival. So being turned back to the town, in my head, I wanna hit as a break even, and then having more money go back to the town, I wanna say $30,000. I know it doesn't sound like much, but to me, that's a great goal.
So I apologize if not everybody has seen Mr. Banks' email that he sent. I'd asked that it be included in our meeting material, but it doesn't matter. It was received early this week. It will be included in meeting materials for future meeting, and you'll have a chance to, it'll get posted, and we'll have a chance to read it and discuss it before we see the budget. So I left, though having read it, I left with the impression that when activities are planned and fees are set, that they're leaving a deficit. That's almost
No.
that's almost how I interpreted what he was writing.
Okay.
Because he wrote about a $200, $200 in fees, yet the revenue that comes to the rec department is only like 160 or 180. And again, we don't have to go into it because we don't have it in front of us, and but again, so my question is, from that though, how are fees set? Are fees set on a budget for each activity? And do you plan to break even? Do you plan for subsidizing the activity and the participants, the cost of that activity from, do you plan for subsidizing the costs from the town budget?
I apologize, I probably should have had this prepared and sent out to you as well. I don't know if you want to pass this around, or I can certainly email it to everybody.
Please
But
email
as a
it, yeah.
basis, that's just a profit and loss statement. What we receive, what we pay out, and then the total is what the rec department brings in. So for a standard, our fees, if you run a program, the rec department gets 20% of whatever the fees are that you set. The only ones that we have wiggle room with or we have control over are basketball and soccer, which is spring and fall. Those are, we control them. I have control of the fields. I have control of the gym. Well, that's changing a little tiny bit because now we have custodians in here, where it was me sitting here for 10 hours a day on a Saturday watching basketball. But that, basically, all those fees come to the rec department. That's how we survived. Because all we had to pay for was the refs and balls, or, pretty much that's it.
And just to clarify, that's how you survived when you were funded by the revolving fund, or this past year when you're town funded?
That's how we survived the entire time I've been here.
Prior to becoming funded by on a general fund budget?
Yes.
Okay. And the reason I'm asking my question is I'm trying to get a sense as to where did we miss if we migrated your budget out of the revolving fund structure to a town funded budget? Where did we miss? Did we just miss the amount of funds that were budgeted because of, say, getting back on your feet after COVID, and we didn't put enough money against it? Or is the wrong structure? Is it a 53, E and a half when it should be a 53D? I'm interested to hear what you have to say, because sounds like there will be discussion about reverting back, and there needs to be stability in the town's budget. We can't be in my opinion, we shouldn't be moving the structure of the budget wildly one way or another in consecutive years. It needs to be given a chance to, we need to get it right if we've made the change, in my opinion.
So, for me, sometimes it's hard for me to explain and articulate what I need. So, I think I was asking for the 53D for many years, but it was, with the change with Charlie gone, and then we had, an interim, and then it was an interim finance director. They weren't focusing on, this is what we need, but it was always like, we don't have the money, we don't have the money, we don't have the money. The ideal situation, and again, which is what most departments run by, is a 53D where you have the funding, but and this was the whole thing. The salaries were not funded by the town. And it was always like, we don't have the money to fund it. We don't have the money, so we can't switch it to a 53D. But then when the whole, okay, we're gonna fund you, and, which is amazing, and I'm, again, very grateful, but here's your expenses, and it's like, this number, I'm not quite sure where it came from.
What number?
Basically, it's 5, 6, 7, 8, 9.
Is it not half of the director's salary,
No, it was basically half of what my expenses were.
the whole budget?
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you for asking these questions, because they really haven't been asked, so.
Okay, Mr. Crowe?
In essence, you're self-funded,
Except for the
No,
salary.
except for,
No.
except for the salary.
No.
The
Not a-
programs are self-funded, and they make money for the town, which I'm not sure if that's, it's great. But it's not self-funded as far as the salaries go,
Right.
no.
Okay.
My understanding, and could be my confusion, you're not self-funded at all now, this past year in FY '23. You're town-funded. You have a budget, and any revenue you collect goes to the general fund. It does not go to a
Right.
revolving fund. The
Right.
revolving fund is not getting
Right.
reimbursed.
Right.
So you're funded like any other department without a revolving fund in the town. No different than the clerk's office, the
Right.
library.
And that's fine too.
It's
We
fine if
wanna
the
keep it
budget
that
were
way,
big enough.
But we need to
But
make sure.
but your
it
programs
needs a
are, your
larger
programs
budget.
are all self-funded.
My programs are 100,000% self-funded, yes.
Mr. Chair?
Go ahead.
I think it's an important point to make too, that when we took this off the revolving fund, correct me if I'm wrong, there was some money in that revolving fund, a good amount that came
Yes, there
back
was.
to the town general fund. The rec department didn't come to us with their
No.
handout.
Yeah, I agree.
They put money into the town general fund
Yeah.
to start this.
Okay.
It was a big amount, too.
I believe it
Yeah.
was almost $60,000 that was turned back to the town.
Please.
So I follow the math. So what you have in your budget request is 174,278, which includes the HCA requests.
Yes.
That's what I see in the second green column. But what you're actually requesting is an additional 40,000 on the supply line and 475410 on the salary line.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. So that would put the supplies and expenses at 98,798?
You got me on that one, didn't you?
'Cause
Well,
you're-
it's
you're asking-
58,798,
Yes.
so plus 40, it would be
Yes,
98,798. Okay.
Good catch.
Well, it's just, depends on how that column is presented.
Well, again, right now, I was allotted the 5, 6, 7, 8, 9.
Right.
And I'm already in a deficit, which was last month, so I'm $14,000 already, I'm just putting bills through. And they asked at my selectmen meeting, what do you anticipate? So that's when I broke down the numbers, that's the piece of paper I handed out. What do you expect to pay?
Should you nominally raise your fees going forward so that your deficit stabilizes and you don't dig yourself into a bigger hole, what's remaining this year? I'm not
It's
saying
still-
you're gonna
it's
make
going-
up.
No, but it's going into the general fund. It's not digging me into a hole. The programs are self-funded.
But you're over-executing your budget. You're spending,
Because they gave me a budget based on 2020 numbers.
yeah, I agree. It is the general fund, so. But if the general fund is getting underfunded based on revenue, perhaps an adjustment's needed. But, okay. We will be discussing this for weeks to come. This is not resolved.
Did I or did I not ask you guys to be easy on me tonight?
No, I
before
told you we
even start?
weren't. I told you we weren't.
With the deficit, Madam Director.
Yeah.
I mean, can we discuss the deficit, like, how did this come about? Did this happen last week, or did you know in December that you were running short?
I knew the moment that they presented the numbers, that it was not going to work.
And what were you told when you said that to them?
Well, if it comes in a deficit, we'll revisit it.
What, do you have any idea what caused the deficit, this large amount?
Because I was not,
Given the money.
I wasn't given the proper amount of money. I mean,
So you don't
again,
work a budget with what you're given?
yeah.
Okay.
I think we,
Go ahead.
I
Mr.
think we
Stebbins.
have to be very careful with the term deficit, because she's
Yeah.
running above budget, but the budget's just expense. She's bringing in revenue that more than offsets the amount of expenses.
I know
So
you did.
to the, is my understanding, and correct me if I didn't fully comprehend what you said, but the town is actually receiving more money for expenses than you're expending.
Yes, sir.
But the
Perhaps.
salaries,
Perhaps. And when the town administrator and the budget director are here, we'll ask them that.
okay?
Yep. Well, again, here's, I'm happy to send this. This is a few
Please do.
months.
That'd be great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Please send it to
Showing
Deirdre.
what we bring in.
Could you send that to Deirdre,
Mm-hmm.
Ms. Farty? Thank you. I have one more question. Go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, whatever information you can provide us that shows the revenue that you have brought in to date and expect to bring in for this fiscal year, so that we can match that up again, because you've given us the expense that you're over.
Yep.
But we need to see the revenue side too, to have a full picture of that.
Okay. Again,
that would be
like,
helpful.
this spreadsheet this is 11 years worth of
Yes.
what we're doing. I will certainly kind of crunch some numbers, and again, you'll be pleasantly surprised, because we have a lot of amazing programs that people are already signing up for. In fact, just to note, we had a record-breaking weekend. It was like 2 days worth of sales. The brochure is not even in your mailbox right now, and I just did a deposit of over $14,000. Woo!
There it is,
Yeah.
deficit.
Yeah, so, yeah.
Well, so all this said, and we're not trying to be tough on you, I know you know that, so we're all kind of tongue-in-cheek on that, but you guys are a shining star amongst programs in the area and certainly in town, so I applaud you and, keep up the great work.
Thank you.
One last question, aside from kind of spreading the sunshine around, and that is, did you make any changes to this budget presentation as a result of your presentation to the Select Board on, I think, the 6th of February, give or take?
Yes, I did. My original ask, so what I did was I took, again, this spreadsheet, and I did an average of what the expenses were over the past 11 years, and it was,
131, 414?
yes, sir. So my original ask was, as you can see, it's probably in there, it was like $72,000, and we changed that to 40. So again, I was just kind of not grasping at straws, I was trying to come up with a number to justify what I was asking for. So the original, I think, documentation you have there was $72,616 was what I was asking for. So it was basically what I was given for a budget, the average, which was the 131, and then subtracted it, and that was the number.
Okay, last call for Ms. Fogarty.
I'm not done yet, though.
Oh, sorry.
Yes, you got
I'm not
You
done.
might
Wait,
be.
hold on.
You might be.
Marijuana funding, I know, you got.
All right, you have 5 minutes.
Okay, ready? Okay, next section. We are asking for host fund money, marijuana funds, and we have an amazing presentation for you for these funds. Number one, we wanted to ask for $13,700 for salaries and supplies for the inclusive camp that we've been running for the past couple of years. You have a memo in your packet. You can read through that, but just some highlights. The Recreation Department is looking to run this camp for participants with disabilities and not, and they can enjoy alongside with their peers. It's a 4-week program that we offer, and it's been so successful. Each day, our participants, they create a craft, bring them home, revolving around the theme of the week. The increase, I'm asking for a little bit more this year because we'd like to bring on some more staff that will allow for more participants. This funding goes directly to employing staff who are all Millis residents and students. And it also offsets the cost for pricing so that families can afford to come to the camp. So it's a win-win for the community. You know, we're employing the teenagers, and, you know, they're learning life lessons that are just amazing, working with all the children. My second request, more importantly, is the teen program coordinator. The total request would be $40,480. So this would include the salary as well as 2/3 of the benefits. Again, there is a memo in there breaking down all the information. Just some highlights. As I mentioned, you know, Erin, she's just, God, I can't even. So right now, we have 75 total volunteers in the Millis Rec Serves program, which Erin has spearheaded and launched for our high school and middle school students. And it's nearly doubled over its inception. We've done 13 events last year. Total hours of volunteer work have been 400 hours. Last year it was 113. So, hello, we're tripling our numbers.
Chris, is this the memo you're referring to? These bullets here on the
believe so.
teen program coordinator?
Nope.
We may not have it.
We don't have
Chair, I'd like to,
Deirdre.
these numbers don't match up
Yeah,
what
we
I
don't.
have
Deirdre.
here. What she's saying doesn't match up what I have on the host
Oh
community
my
agreement form.
goodness. Well,
Because
I
she said
have those
13,700, and this is listed as 12,980.
yeah, no.
Yeah,
No.
none of this is,
We
no,
need an updated
we don't
form.
have that.
Turn that around. Are you double-sided? Look on the other side.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
not there.
no, I see it. Look on the other side.
That's outdated.
Yeah, this is, that's what I'm referring to.
But this isn't what you're saying.
The numbers are all wrong, they're different.
I'm
So
not gonna take the blame for that.
As a director,
if you could just,
Oh, my
if you could
goodness.
just email it to Deirdre,
Yeah,
any revised copy, make sure it's
Deidre was
dated.
just saying something.
It's okay. It doesn't matter. Just please email what
Yes.
you're referring to and just make sure there's a date on it, and we'll make sure it gets added to our meeting information. So,
Okay.
Not a major issue. Mr. Underhill.
Just a quick, all of this are things that have been funded from host community funds
yes.
in previous budgets, correct? There's
Yes.
nothing new here that we
Nothing
haven't
new.
funded. Excellent, that's what I
Nothing new.
thought.
thank you for.
No,
Yeah.
nothing new. I know, I'm already past my line, but can I just say a few things because it's very important to me? As the director, Erin. As the director, I'm in awe of her passion. Oh my God, dork. She's just amazing and does such great things for this town. You'll never know. You won't know unless you're in there. All right, that's enough. I can't even, she's amazing.
She is amazing.
I can't even get it out. I'm sorry.
Ms. Fogarty, like all HCA requests, I say this to everybody, you need to start planning on how you will
Yes.
execute those programs, if at all,
Yep.
once the HCA funding goes away.
We are
It's-
currently
it's
looking
finite,
into
so.
grants right now.
Good.
And hopefully, with a proven record, perhaps maybe it'll be taken into consideration, but we are already looking at grants. Oh my gosh, dang it, oh, yeah, I almost did it.
Mr. Chair, not to keep jumping in, but it's 2 more years
year.
remaining on the host community
I'm not
agreement?
certain.
Approximately.
Yeah. Okay, yep,
Yeah, okay.
okay.
Oh,
This is the last word, and then we're moving on.
Really quick.
Go ahead, Scott.
I just want to thank Chris and Aaron. I think the rec department, I wish I had a rec department when I was a kid in town. We did, so I think it's an important program. I think I've been to some of the events, so thank you.
Thanks, Scott.
Thank
All
you
right.
all so much, I really appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chris.
Don't make fun of me tomorrow.
Oh.
I'll get that information to you.
All right, we're, next presentation is Ms. Tolson from the library.
Good evening. It's unlikely. As long as you're not too hard on me.
No.
So I want to start just by going through a few highlights from calendar year 2022 for the library. So in terms of programs and services, we are kind of back with our in-person programming. This past year, we really saw a return to programming, an increase in attendance. We offered 464 programs in 2022, which was 43% more than the previous year. And a number of new programs were added, including a monthly board game night for adults and middle school Friday programs. We really were able to increase our middle school outreach and programming due to the marijuana impact funding that we received. And so total attendance at programs was 8,279, which was an 87% increase from 2021. And as I mentioned, we were able to add Thursday and Friday evening hours in January 2022 as a result of the marijuana impact funding that we received. And that was something that we have been asked for a lot over the years from the community. So it was great to be able to do that, and we've been able to offer a lot more programming on those evenings. In terms of our collections and circulation, we saw actually a 27% increase in circulation of physical materials, which is kind of goes against the trend of what other libraries in the network are seeing. Most libraries saw a decrease in circulation, and there are only a handful of libraries in the network that actually saw an increase in circulation of books and movies and our library of things and all the things that we offer. And then in terms of demand for downloadable materials, so ebooks, audiobooks that we lend out, that has continued every year to be more and more popular. We had over 19,000 checkouts in 2022, which was a 15% increase from 2021, and every year we just see an increase in those. And then a few things I wanted to mention in terms of facilities. So the library building we're coming up actually this year on our 10-year anniversary of the library opening. So one of the things that we did in 2022 is the trustees funded a facilities condition assessment, which it kind of laid out a map for us in terms of capital planning for repairs and maintenance that we might expect in the next 20 years. So that has already been really helpful in being able to set priorities for maintaining the building and estimating costs for maintenance and capital improvements that we might need in years to come. Thanks to funding from our Friends group, we added wayfinding signage inside the building, which was long overdue. And we were able to begin replacing, or begin the process to replace our lighting management system and upgrade to LED lighting with a grant that we got from the state budget this past year, or this current fiscal year. And then in terms of staff, so this kind of relates back to the Thursday and Friday hours. So with the funding that we received last year, we were able to add somebody who's focused on, staffing those evening hours, but also doing programming for middle school and teen populations in the community, which were kind of underserved previously. So we've been able to develop a lot of dedicated middle school programming and kind of increase usage from that group. And staff, we did a few all-staff trainings this year as well. So we did a reader's advisory training that all staff attended, as well as a cybersecurity training through the town. So then moving on to our budget request. There's really not too much here that should be surprising. The only,
Can you, which document are you?
so I'm looking at the budget spreadsheet.
Or, just, if you,
Just,
do you have yours in front of you? You could just,
Yeah,
okay.
it's the,
Thank you.
I don't know what form number it is, but.
We have
the budget
100 spreadsheets in front of us.
Okay,
This, yours has pink.
yes,
does
it has
somewhere.
pink.
One on
I
the
have
front.
it.
Page one.
They don't have that.
Thank
I
you.
think it's the front one.
Oh, there. Oh, this one here?
Yeah,
Yep.
Oh,
I
okay.
think so. So it should show what our request is this year compared with the previous year. So it's mostly kind of level from last year. Once again, we're requesting funding for our evening library assistant to be able to continue to offer the Thursday and Friday evening hours and the middle school programming, and I'll talk more about that in a moment. The other big change, or like the big change this year is under expenses, I separated out maintenance contracts from building repairs. I wanted it to be a little clearer in terms of what building repairs actually are, because in previous years, that included all of our regular maintenance that happens every year, like our HVAC servicing contract through the town, the various inspections that are required. Let me see what else is in there. But basically, that is the stuff that remains kind of consistent year to year. Yeah, our security system contract. So those things aren't actually building repairs, so I just kind of wanted to separate that out so it would be more clear. And then building repairs is exactly what it sounds like, kind of more unexpected repairs that come up through the year, which there always seems to be something. And we've seen those costs increase pretty much every year. I think in addition to the building being 10 years old now, just costs of maintenance and repairs have gone up. So let's see, in this year so far, let me just see, I have our repairs somewhere. So this year so far, just in repairs, it's totaled almost 20,000 because of a lot of unanticipated HVAC issues, electrical issues, kind of stuff that we weren't able to put off because they were operational. And then in terms of maintenance contracts, our annual maintenance of our HVAC system, which is contracted through the town, they kind of do all the town buildings. Those costs doubled from last year. So that's why you'll see those two lines add up to, more than the previous year because those increased maintenance costs and also just, we've historically, and I know I've talked about this in previous budget years, we've historically just not had enough to be able to adequately maintain the building in that budget line. So this is like a very conservative estimate of what we would need to be able to, kind of pay for the necessary repairs to kind of keep the building operational. And then everything else is kind of level. Library materials needs to be 19% of our total budget for our state certification, so that kind of just ends up being that. And were there any questions about that before I talk more about the HCA requests?
Mr. Chair?
Mr. Underhill?
When we rolled in the town buildings to fall, some of the maintenance to fall under the school department, was the library included with those buildings? I can't remember.
Yeah, so now our maintenance, like cleaning and just kind of small maintenance, is done by that department as well. So that's not paid out of our budget.
Right. So I just wonder if some of this.
So this is just stuff that's kind of beyond the scope of what they would address.
Because some of this on your report from GRLA is simple preventative maintenance, cleaning
Right.
door latches, checking
Right.
ceiling tile.
Exactly.
Like the 90-minute emergency light test is required annually under
Right.
NFPA 101.
Right.
So it should definitely fall under maintenance.
Yeah.
Rather than above and beyond. So thank you.
Yes.
Could you describe, or just re-hit the topic, your 2023 adopted budget for wages was 209? And
Yes.
your requested budget is 186, I see. And could you just describe that? It looks like about a 23.
Plus the HCA.
Yeah, so plus the
I'm just going,
HCA.
I'm looking at the first green column compared to the FY '23. I'm not worried about HCA
So the
right now.
the FY '23 includes those HCA
it does
funds
include
from the
it, okay.
previous year.
Okay. Well, that would explain it. Thank you.
Yeah.
Any questions from anybody? Take a minute to look. So you answered the question I was gonna have while you were talking about the library materials, saying that the library material amount needs to be 19% of the total budget. Thus, because your budget went up, your library materials line went up. Your
Right.
bottom line budget went up, so you're backing into that essentially.
Right.
I was gonna say, man, if you just increased your circulation by, I think you said 27%, or,
Yeah.
and now you're asking for an additional funding over and above what was last year's increase, but I understand. Any other questions?
I'd like to understand the meaning of the GRLA report of the maintenance that's included here. Well, it's an
Sure.
interesting document that adds up to a lot of money. So what's the
Right.
plan with this?
Right, so I think, as Mr. Underhill pointed out, some of that stuff we would be able to do
Right.
in-house with our, within our budget, or with our maintenance staff that we currently have in the school building department. And some of those items I have put forward as capital requests to the capital planning committee. So those are the recommendations that we got from this company that did the assessment. And we'll just do the best we can to get what needs to be done.
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Ward?
we talked about this in the capital planning committee meeting last week, and this is an overall analysis of what needs to be done, both maintenance-wise as well as capital improvement-wise. And we're in the process now of going through that prioritizing of what's needed and then spreading it out between the different fiscal years.
Thank you, Mr. Lord.
No more questions? Keep going.
Okay, so then to move on to the HCA request. So these are the same as what we requested last year in terms of staff hours. So we're looking at funding for a 16-hour per week library assistant who would staff those evening hours that I had mentioned on Thursday and Fridays, as well as target focus on programming for teens. And just to kind of give a little more detail about that, so it's been, when I sent out this report, I have a little more data now, but I was looking at 11 months of data from, the time that we added these Thursday and Friday evening hours. And we were able to offer an additional 50 programs for all different ages, and that includes those middle school programs I was mentioning, and saw almost 1,300 people attend those programs. And we've gotten a lot of positive feedback from the community too, particularly with the Thursday evening hours, that, it just kind of makes it consistent because we're open till 8 p.m. Monday through Wednesday, so it kind of just makes it consistent throughout the rest of the week. So from late January through December 2022, we saw over 5,200 visitors during the hours of 4 and 8 p.m. on Thursday and Friday evenings. So just to give a little data about kind of how those hours are being used. And then the other request is for Saturday hours in the summer. So we are open, previously we were open Saturdays, September through June, and closed in July and August. So this funding allows us to staff Saturdays in July and August, and kind of have those weekend hours available consistently all year round. I think that people who have full-time jobs and other weekday commitments, they appreciate being able to access the library during weekend hours year-round. And Saturdays are, it's a shorter day, but it's one of our busier days. Especially, with kids off in the summer, it kind of gives families something else to do if they're around. So, let's see, in 21 and 2022, so this would, there's 2 years now that we've been able to offer these summer Saturdays, and in addition to almost 2,000 visitors total, we had 111 people attend programs that were previously not offered on weekends in the summer. So the total request for that is $2,227.50, which I think is a small amount for what people in the community are getting. So those are the 2 requests, which, as I said, are kind of consistent from what we received last year. Any questions about those?
I don't have any. Anybody else?
Nope.
Okay. Super. Do either of your trustees want to say anything? I'm not going to put anybody on the spot. I may not be allowed back in the house tonight, but all right. Thank you very much, Ms. Tolson.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hold on,
Thank you.
Thanks, Skip.
getting good at this. This is the third budget?
Yeah. I think
Okay,
so.
I'm going to invite Ms. Harden forward to talk to us about the town clerk, elections, and the registrar budget. Hit the button.
This is 90-minute time before the break.
Lisa, welcome.
Good evening.
Hello.
Lisa Harden, Mills Town Clerk. I have 3 budgets, town clerk, registrars, and elections. And I think most of your interest will probably be on my above-level service request for my own position. So I'm going to zip through the level service budgets and see if there's any questions on those. And then we can talk about the above-level service. If that will be okay?
Well, let's stick together. So right now, I'm looking at the elections. Green column is,
All right?
green column is the level funded request. It doesn't look like there's any above service level for elections. And it looks,
Well, there's no
There's-
above-level
so actually it's
service,
above
but
service.
there is an increase, because
Right, the-
elections are based on the number of elections and town meetings in a year. And you may recall that you cut my elections budget last year by 15,000.
not me personally, but
The
The ta-
finance
the
committee.
town voters
Or
did.
somebody.
town
Well,
voters.
Well, they didn't, it wasn't their recommendation, though. It was from the finance committee and the selectmen.
Okay. Town voters adopted the budget.
They did, but nobody really talked about the cut.
Okay.
So I am actually going to be maybe in the red for the current year.
Can you tell us about the
can.
wages line goes from 25,000 to 38,000?
Right. Well, I requested 40, and someone cut it by 15. So I did ask for what I thought I needed. So we are going to need more,
Are there more elections this year in
No, it's
'24 than there was in
pretty
'23?
much the same. That's why this year it's gone up to 38,450. 'Cause it would have been level funded, basically,
Mr. Chair?
if my wages hadn't been cut.
How many elections were there in
This
calendar
current-
year,
this
fiscal
current-
year '23?
This current year. There was a
In fiscal
pri-
year '23, how many
Right.
elections were there?
There was a September state primary,
Yeah.
this November state election, and the town election coming up.
Okay.
And
How
then
many-
2 town meetings, November and May.
Okay. How many elections are there going to be in fiscal year '24?
There will be 3 elections. Where's my info? Oh. You may have heard already that there will be a special town election related to the Tri-County School Building Project in October.
So if you could just itemize them, go through them for me. So there's
So
no
there's-
state primary this year?
No,
Is there?
No state primary.
Yep.
There is a presidential primary. Oh, my God, it's coming around again.
Too fast.
In 2024,
So there's
in March.
there's a federal primary.
Yep. And that will involve an early voting period of at least a week.
That's the first one within the fiscal year?
The first election in the fiscal year will be October, the special town
Okay,
election.
special, so that's for
That's in
Tri-County?
October for Tri-County.
Okay, thank you.
That does not have an early voting period. It's a one, there's, you can do absentee voting, but.
Okay,
And then the presidential primary will, I believe, is going to be March 7th,
okay.
and then the town election, May 13th, next year,
Okay, so that's 3 elections plus
Yep.
2 town meetings.
and 2 town meetings. So it's 5 events,
Okay, good.
which is the same as this year.
Were there any impacts, what were the impacts to being underfunded during fiscal year '23?
Well, my current budget in elections. Where's it? It's currently 7,000 in the hole. But it's not that bad, actually, because some of the The wages are, I don't have enough. I've got $1,400 left in there, but I still have to do the town election. But the wages clerical, which is my staff, is $8,800 in the whole, but that's partly because I have wages clerical in 3 different budgets, and if they don't type in the right account number, comes out of the wrong place. So I do have some more money in town clerk clerical overtime. I still have 8,000 in there. So usually since I have 3 budgets, I can go by the bottom line of all 3 of them, because it's difficult to really separate them out, because my staff does all the clerical for all of them. So
I'm just trying to
sometimes things get put in the wrong line item, that's all.
But do you understand the nature of my question? I'm trying to assess the impact of being underfunded. You know, if you were underfunded, certainly under your requested amount, what was the impact?
Well, I asked for 40, and I now have $1,400 left.
So
Because I got
potentially you
25.
could have to have an additional
5,000 maybe,
this year.
this year. But I may be able to find some of it in one of the other wage things. I don't know if I can take money for election workers out of the clerical line item. That's union staff, I don't know how that works. But if there's an overage in something, it goes back into the general fund, and then it can come out again with a, whatever you call those things that you do in June, where you try to.
Yeah,
transfers.
the line transfer.
Right.
So I remember kind of our discussion from last fiscal year. So you are currently waiting on refunds from the state?
We have been given the opportunity to apply, which we filled out the forms for some early voting expenses
Right.
for the 2 elections that were in the fall. They had some questions about it, and they don't necessarily have enough money in whatever they were given. You know, they have to divide it up among all the 350 cities and towns, and they can't necessarily totally fund every town what they spent. But
Sure.
we'll get something. We should get something.
So typically, when do those refunds come in?
Well, for regular elections, like, for the elections themselves, we already got the refund for those, because it's a state mandate that all the towns be refunded for 3 hours, whatever it costs for 3 hours, because back in the day, the state decided that we had to open at 7 instead of 10. But the early voting is still new to the state and to us, and how it's going to be funded or refunded or whatever. So it's kind of behind the 8 ball for those.
So it varies, or you don't have a long enough track record to know when to anticipate when those funds would be refunded?
I don't think we've ever been given the opportunity to apply before.
Okay.
So this is the first time, really. So I don't know. It'll be sometime during the current fiscal year, I believe.
Okay.
Mr. Crum?
Given that you have a presidential primary, given the nature of the contentious attitudes towards federal elections these days, do you anticipate that you will need extra resources to maintain the voting areas during that period of time? Are you anticipating any issues with that?
I'm not participating issues. I think I've budgeted for whatever I think I'm going to need.
Okay.
I mean, we already had the 2020 presidential election, which was certainly contentious. So I have something to go by.
Okay, thank
And
you.
then we had last last fall also. But presidential, yeah, will be, depending on who's
So
on the
you think
ballot, will
you've-
be,
You've got it covered, pretty much?
yeah, I think so.
Okay, thank you.
Speaking as an election worker who helps out, she has it covered. Does very well at it.
Yep.
Okay, keep going, thank you.
All
for,
right. So that's, wait a minute. Got
I'm a
all
little
my things here.
confused. If she's saying that you've got 8,000, you're asking for more money for this coming year, but you said you've got money that you can still spend, so why are you asking for more money?
Well, I don't know exactly because I still have another election to go through. So I'm just saying, I think I can probably cover some of what's coming. I mean, I've still got, what, four months left?
I know, but didn't you just say to us that you were asking for $45,000, or 38?
38,450?
Which is $13,000, if my math is correct.
Yep.
About $13,000 more than you had for last year,
Right,
for this
right.
past year.
And, but I've only got $1,400 in that budget line item at the moment. So I don't,
Right, but then you
and then I
said you
based
could-
it
you've
on
got-
what I need, which
I know,
is,
but, no, I know, but then you said you had about $8,000 somewhere else.
well, I'm not sure, maybe, if I don't use
I know, but then it
overtime.
makes it hard for us to know if you need it or not, because you're not really giving us the information to say, I need X amount for this, X amount for that, X amount for this.
Well, overtime isn't totally predictable. I put in for this current year what I thought I needed. We still have, several months to go. I can't say that I'm not going to use it all. I can't tell my,
But you're asking
Yeah.
for $13,000 more for this coming year.
right, based on what, I'm budgeting for what I think I'll need for those 3 elections. And I spelled it all out, and I spelled it all out last year. And I don't think it's that different, actually, from what I requested last year. I tried.
Am I not?
I tried going with fewer people, but I wasn't able to, so I had to, what?
No, I'm listening to you.
The town election's the most expensive one, so I don't know if I can do it for the amount of money that I have left.
Okay.
Town elections are more expensive. They're not as expensive as the presidential election, but we have to pay for our own ballots. State pays for the ballots on state elections. And there's no refund for a town election.
So you're guessing you're gonna need $13,000 more.
Well, that's what all these figures are, is based on my experience. I'm projecting based on my, where is it? You can look at what I spelled out in my elections.
Lisa, can I ask
newspaper
you a
here.
question? Can I jump in?
Please do.
Please. For your town clerk budget, you've got salaries, clerical overtime, and that number varies a little bit, or, to moderately. It was $10,000 in FY '23, the same amount requested in 2024 of $10,000. Where are those overtime hours traditionally used? Are they for elections?
Census, dog license. Sometimes it's stuff that theoretically could be considered Board of Registrars.
Are those activities that you just described not traditional, fairly everyday, routine activities that I wouldn't imagine that you would need overtime hours for dog licenses, especially since we just invested in the online system. And I did hear you say that, it's hard to balance or to, properly allocate effort for your personnel between elections, town clerk activities, and registrar's activities. I sense that you are using some overtime dollars for elections. I mean, that would make sense, you use overtime to man elections.
Yes, and it's like, an election isn't one day. It's
I
like
have,
3
no, I
months.
understand, and I'm trying to kind of bridge the gap between what
Okay.
I think Joyce is asking and what I think you're answering, is that when push has come to shove, you've managed to fulfill the requirement, done an excellent job with elections, and you're using overtime to do it, which isn't great because it's not the most efficient way. Perhaps there shouldn't be as much money in overtime, and there should be more money in the elections budget, especially since the requirement appears to be exactly the same between FY '23 and '24. So if you're able to, what I heard you say was you're gonna transfer money between lines at the end of the year to get you from the $1,400 that you have left to complete the elections during this fiscal year. Why couldn't you do that next year without having an additional $13,000 added to the budget? Because your overtime for '23 is the same for '24, and it appears that the requirements are the same. I think that's what we're getting at.
Thank you. Yes.
You can move my money around any way you want. I mean, you're
Okay.
the one who's in charge. I'm putting it where I think I need it.
Okay,
Um,
all right, you've answered my
Now,
question.
I mean, part of the justification for my above-level service request is that I would be able to have a better handle on what overtime is being used, because it's been a problem in my office. Because the staff have been doing the payroll, and they sometimes work overtime that, maybe doesn't need to be done.
Okay, thank you. Please keep going.
But I don't know unless I'm there. All right.
Lisa, by
well-
no means was I trying to put you on the defense. I was just trying to understand where the discrepancy was. Because you were saying you had a certain amount of money to play with and that you could juggle it.
Well, that's,
Now
I'm
you're-
projecting maybe I can do that. I'm saying I might not be requesting 15,000 for a transfer in June. I'm thinking I can probably go for less. Since we're on elections, is there any other questions about elections? All right. Wait a minute. Elections over here. Registrar is pretty small because there isn't any, there's very little wages in there. And that department is in charge of voter registration, town census, and publishing street list. So there's only an increase, the $14 in the salaries, that's 2%. That's a stipend. The clerical overtime staying the same, and the, what are we doing? Expenses is up 1,100. It's, on all my budgets, I had to have more for postage. Postage just went up in January, and they're projecting it'll go up six months from now, and then twice a year after that. And with the increase in people interested in voting by mail, that postage is in elections, but the voter registration part of it, trying to get it out of the registrars, it's, again, postage is hard to get it in the right place too, because, if you have a stack of things to put postage on, you just want to put it into one department at a time. So anyway, I added 500 for postage, and printing costs for the census have gone up. So that covers the $1,114 increase in that budget. Are there any questions about registrar? Okay. Then town clerk, First, I'll do the level service. The clerical went up $787. 100 of that is increase in longevity and the, 887. 100 of that is longevity, and 787 is the increase, is step increase. And the SEIU contract isn't approved yet, so it doesn't have, I'm sure you're aware of that. That'll be some kind of an increase, but I don't know what that is. So this is just step increase for, it's actually just for Sue because Kathy's now reached step 10. So it's just for one person. So that's the 787 and the 100 increase in the salaries. And then expenses went up 1,200. 500 in supplies and 500 in postage. And 200 in equipment repairs.
Okay.
So that's a total of $2,087 increase. So the total with the three budgets is, total increase is $23,658. And, you know, the biggest portion of that was that elections thing, 13,000. Are there any questions on that? Because the only other thing, which I definitely want to talk about, is my above-level service
Please,
request.
please proceed.
Okay. Now, there's been a change since I presented to the Select Board. I met with Mike Bazinski and Ellen Rosenfeld, and they suggested that it might be more doable if I decreased my ask. So you have the new ask, which is to make my salary a total of $30,000. And just to give you a little background, the past 6 years, I've been at about $12,500. It went from $12,413 to $12,723. Before that, the previous 14 years, I was at $5,200, and it gradually went up to $6,000. And my hours are as needed, and this is because we're still in the same staffing levels as we've been for the last 30 years. And when other town clerks were going to full-time, about 30, 35 years ago, the Millis town clerk had a full-time job. He was a teacher in the middle schools, and he did not want to be full-time, so he made his assistant a full-time person. So that's why the hours are a little weird. And the department head has hours as needed, and the assistant is full-time, and then I have a 20-hour-a-week person also. So I have been struggling and trying to get the town on board with making my position full-time, because I believe that the department head should be full-time. And some people have said, well, that's how it was when you first got elected, you know, so you should just live with it. But I believe that one of the things the department head should do is make recommendations when things aren't working properly, and changes that should be made, and what those changes should be. And, you know, that's what all the department heads do when they present their budget, is tell you what changes need to be made. So I think that the department head should eventually be full-time. But I'm not going to go there this year. This year, I'm saying if you will increase it from the 12,700 to 30,000, which is an increase of 17,300. I'll be in the office 16 hours, a minimum of 16 hours a week during regular, open office hours. So I've already started, I've been doing it for, this is my 3rd week. In the afternoons, because there's already 2 people there in the morning, so it makes more sense for me to be there in the afternoon. 12:30 to 4:30, except Mondays, sometimes it's later, so that I'm thinking maybe I'll go 2 to 5 or 6 or something, so that people can come in after, because we're open later on Mondays. And then it's still as needed, so usually once I get here, I'm here till at least 8. And during elections, it'll still be 40 to 60 hours a week. So I guess some of the pushback I've gotten in the past is, well, we don't trust that you'll ever show up. So I'm trying to show I will show up, and that that's what we could get for increasing it to 30. But I would be happy to talk about it more.
Anybody have any questions? Mr. Crowe?
When I saw the budget, I was actually a little shocked to see that, you know, we had a $12,000 clerk. Having been involved with other towns and other town clerks, I know that, as you said, they're all full-time, have been full-time for many years. Some are not even elected anymore, they're appointed. Yeah, I was surprised. And I know you do a good job, and I've only been here 4 years, but I vote. And I know your office does a great job. So, I mean, I find it difficult to believe that you could do all your work for $12,000, or that makes any sense.
Well, I mean, if you figured it out, the hourly rate, it would be sad.
Right.
So I don't even want to look at it. I'm trying to get something.
I mean, you know, again, I certainly understand your point, and I agree with you. I'll leave it at that.
Anybody else?
Mr. Chair?
Mr. Underhill?
Lisa, in your
Yep.
proposal, you say no additional health insurance is required since you already enrolled.
Right.
150 years from now, when you decide you don't want to be the town clerk anymore, and a new town clerk comes in, and if they're working those 16 hours, would they be eligible, do you know? for
If
health
they're
insurance?
elected, they can. I pay my share.
Right.
The same with everybody else. But elected, anybody who's elected in Millis or anywhere in the state is allowed to
Is
be
eligible.
on the health program.
Okay.
So I've been on it. Well, I started out as an employee in that office. I was the 20-hour-a-week person. So I just was able to stay on it.
Thank you.
Yep. So, you know, if it got changed to appointed, it would be like all the other employees.
I've, you know, been on this committee for a number of years, and every year, I mean, I empathize with your position. I don't necessarily agree with all of the rationale and logic that you've presented over the years, but I do appreciate that, as Mr. Crone said, and as evidenced, you know, you put a lot of work into, you know, you're dedicated to your job and you do a good job. I think there's a structural issue with how the town clerk's office is arranged, how it's organized. And, you know, I don't like saying, and I won't say that, you know, you got elected and you knew this was the arrangement and deal with it. I think it needs to be corrected. And that would require change. And that what I can't get past is, originally, when I've heard your request in past years, it was we need to more or less double the size of double the budget, double the, you know, the FTEs and the size of the town clerk's office. And what I couldn't get past was why would I, as a finance committee member, recommend that to the town? I never got an answer to what would that doubling of size, doubling of budget get the town that they're not getting now. Now, I think you probably can justify, I hope, and I'll read this, you know, myself, and we'll discuss it, so that hopefully we can get a clear explanation as to what the additional resources would provide to the town. And you touched on it. In the past, you weren't able to answer that question, to say, well, why would we double the town budget for the town clerk's office? So perhaps the recommendation that you got from the town administrator and a select board member helps you justify it, and maybe the answer is baby steps, but I still think that there's an issue with, the structure where the elected official is part-time. There are hours, full-time hours for your deputy or your assistant. Forgive me for not knowing which one the title is, but I think you understand. I hope you
I
understand.
totally agree.
I hope
that
you
there's a-
understand.
There's an issue.
So, anyway,
That's what I'm bringing up. And I'm hoping that if I can get in there more hours when my staff is working, I'll get a better handle on what's actually going on in there.
Ms. Boyardi?
When there's election time and you said you're working 40, 50 hours a week, 60 hours a week, are you compensated for those hours, or are you just doing
No.
that out of the goodness of your heart,
That's the town clerk as needed,
as needed?
so.
Okay,
Thank you for doing that.
yeah, thank you.
Saved the town a lot of
I
money over
don't, in my humble opinion, I don't think anyone would take this job, whether appointed or whatever, but if they're, I don't think anyone in their right mind would take this job the way it is now.
Well, that's where, there's a discussion to be had there, because it gets back to, you have to make a decision to run for election.
Right.
It was a contested election the last time, so there were actually two people.
That wanted to, I
That
know.
wanted the job.
Right. But that was also, there was conversation of the amount of money being paid could possibly have increased at that point. There was discussion of that too. So I don't know, I mean, I sure in hell wouldn't work the amount of hours she works for the pay she gets. And I think that the $30,000 is a reasonable amount of money to be asking for. I agree that the structure is really bad.
There has to be justification as to, like any above service level request before us, there has to be justification as to why we would spend, why the town should, because we're recommending, why the town should vote to approve doubling a budget or adding 50% to a budget. The justification has to be there. And if the justification is, it's just not enough hours, okay, we'll answer that further, go into further detail. What is not being done now in the town clerk? We all just said the town clerk's office does a great job. Well, they do it with the budget that they had last year. Why do we need to add 50% to the budget? And that's a very difficult question to answer.
Mr. Chair?
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
So as long as I've been on the Finance Committee, we've been discussing this and the absurdity of having a department head who is part-time and paid less than $13,000. So, I mean, I like the, if you will, baby step proposal, because we've never been able to make that jump to full-time. We've talked about it every year
Right.
that I've been on Finance Committee. And I've been in Millis for 12 years now, almost 13. So, I appreciate that you've put forward a proposal that I think has a greater chance of being accepted. I think to me, it appears that we don't have enough hours in the town clerk's office for everything that is required now in 2023. So I think that's the case that needs to be made and you've laid it out somewhat as to why the workload has increased from, you started how long ago have you been doing it?
2003.
So for 20
My
years?
20th year, yes.
So
Did you get a
part,
20-year pin?
I don't even get longevity.
so part of how you can help us is in understanding what that increase in demands on the town clerk's office looks like.
Well, a lot of it is the same in everybody's, more everything has to be on the computer. Everybody wants reports. And lately, like the last 4 years, there's been a huge increase in the amount of time that needs to be spent on elections.
So that's important information for us to know, because we're not in your shoes, we don't see what you see, or what the town's clerk office sees. But I do appreciate that you've put forward an interim proposal, that, because I don't want to just keep going around and around with the same proposal year after year, and it,
Well, it's actually, over the last 5 years, I think I've done like 5 different proposals.
Yeah.
But I've actually gotten some feedback
Yeah.
this year, so
Okay.
that was positive.
I
I
think what you
think
need to
it-
do is
I'm go-
document.
I'm going to interrupt just because we
Well,
need to.
No,
No, I
now
just
that
wanted-
she's there, the 16, she says she's been for 3 weeks, has been doing 16 hours. What she's doing.
Right.
So that it is,
And that's just included in my salary this year,
right.
not asking for any more money for
No,
this
no,
year.
I understand
Okay,
that.
Lisa, I'm going to let you have the final word, the last word, if there's anything else. Otherwise, we're going to move
Well,
on.
this is, I'm saying it's probably in the town's interest to keep it a stipend, because it's just voted at town meeting, it's a line item, it's not even a line item, it's part of a line item. It's not broken out in the budget that the townspeople see. And it's just for a year.
Lisa,
So next budget cycle, we can, if it is approved, you're only doing it for 1 year. And then, we can see if, is it worth it or not?
Lisa, is your office, or is the clerk's position impacted at all by the recreational sale of marijuana in town?
No, I've been trying to figure out a way. But
Okay.
we're basically entirely service-oriented. We don't make any money to speak of.
Right.
And whatever we do get goes into the general fund, and I don't have any teams. I do have a couple of senior write-offs.
All right.
I don't know, can we pay for that with
Thank you very much.
marijuana impact money?
Thank you, Lisa.
Did anybody else have anything they wanted to say? No? Okay.
You were gonna say something.
If you think of any other questions you have, or any,
We know where to find you. Thank you.
I did give you the revised budget request above level service, but I noticed in the budget narrative, it still was talking about the full-time thing on the back, so
Right.
just ignore that. Thank you.
All right, next on our agenda is the petitioned
Lisa.
article presentation by Ms. Burke, who I don't know, but I presume you are Ms. Burke.
I made written copies too, should I give them to
I
you now?
think we have them. So we have
This
this
is what I'm saying tonight.
background, we have a background package
Yeah, this is more.
and the EHT documents.
So thank you for inviting me and for all the work you do. And I'm not asking for any money. I've been working on the wireless issue in Massachusetts for about 10 years, and before that in California. I'm a journalist, and I work with Safe Tech International. So there appears to be a little bit less coverage of the wireless issue here in the eastern side of the state, but the Greenfield Recorder has been consistently reporting about wireless and zoning issues in the hill towns along the Route 2 corridor. And the Pittsfield Verizon tower story has been unfolding in the Berkshire Eagle on Spectrum TV News and other outlets for over 3 years. So this issue is not only about the placement of towers, it's also about the wireless exposures. And I'm aware of 5 towns now that have petitions slated for the Springtown meeting votes in Massachusetts related to the radio frequency issue. I believe there are also other towns that are entertaining bylaw changes. So 3, Great Barrington, Sheffield, and Upton are fairly similar. And what they're basically saying is that until the FCC reviews the radio frequency exposure limits, that they either want to ban the installation of 5G, halt the installation, or what Upton said, and I have a copy for you in the packet of Upton, is any application is considered incomplete until the FCC completes its investigation. Then there are two others, Southborough and Millis, where we're requesting that the administration send letters of concern about the FCC exposure limits. So all 5 of these petitions have to do with asking for a review of the science for radio frequencies. And they all refer to the 2021 court ruling against the FCC. The FCC opened a docket in 2013, and they asked for comments on whether the radio frequency exposure limits are adequate. They closed the docket in 2019, and they didn't address anything at all. And they basically went back to the 1996 exposure limits. So a series of lawsuits were brought against the FCC. The Environmental Health Trust and Children's Health Defense were 2 of the organizations. One family in Massachusetts was a plaintiff, Jonathan Mirren and his wife, Godelier. So the U.S. Court of Appeals in the District of Columbia ruled that FCC decision not to look at exposure limits was arbitrary and capricious and not evidence-based. And in looking at the record, they came up with 4 issues of concern that they remanded to the FCC. They said that the FCC failed to address the issue of long-term exposures, of impacts to children, of testimony of people who had been injured, and impacts to wildlife and the environment. And there were some other problems also. It violated the Administrative Procedures Act. So this court remand to the FCC has been unaddressed. No one has held the FCC accountable for meeting the court's remand. And more science has emerged since 2019, including 2 direct 5G harm case studies. So all 5 of the towns are basically asking our elected officials to help to bring the FCC to meet the demands of the court. So the governor of Wyoming sent a letter to the FCC about their failure to address the court ruling, which is kind of like talking to the fox who's taking care of the hen house. But there was a big debacle in Wyoming over putting cell phone towers in Grand Teton State Park or something like that, and there was a lot of activism in Wyoming. Then Pittsfield, in November of 2022, sent letters of concern, and it's in your packet here what they wrote and who they sent it to. It's a little bit different than my list. But this is where I got the idea to support Pittsfield and to ask Millis to do the same. So I can tell you a little bit about the Pittsfield Tower debate if you'd like to hear about it, or I can stop because I know we're running a little bit over time if you have enough information already.
I'm going to ask you to, if you can, I've read it a little bit, and I know that, I believe that the most recent arguments have been that the city council influenced the Board of Health, and that's what one of the lawsuits is against. And I'm not sure that that's germane to what we're talking about right now. Could you, if you agree with that, can you describe it for us without bogging down into that? Because there's a lot of legal nuances that I don't think are pertinent here. But I could be wrong.
No, well, it is very interesting because what you said is accurate, and there was an article by a ProPublica investigative reporter, Peter Elkin, and it's in this packet here, about this Pittsfield case. But what did happen is the Board of Health tried to issue a cease and desist order to Verizon, and the city council didn't want to fund it. Actually, Verizon came and sued the town for trying to do this. The town didn't want to fund the lawsuit. So the town is being sued, and the lawyer who's representing the town is the same lawyer, one of the same lawyers who argued this other suit against the FCC. But on February 10th, the organization, I have to just look up the name, that advises the boards of health in Massachusetts basically filed an amicus brief in the case, and it's the Massachusetts Association of Health Boards. And what they said is that the Pittsfield Board of Health was coerced in an improper manner that no one has the authority to override the responsibility of the health boards to protect the citizens. The lawyer also wrote that the association agrees with the local board's initial order, which found evidence that the health complaints of residents living by the tower were connected to the radio frequency radiation based on credible scientific evidence. So this is a pretty big piece that's taking place in Massachusetts around this issue of safety. There was another amicus brief about Euclidean zoning regulations, incompatible land use. But my point is that it's not just about where we place the towers. It's that the radio frequency exposure limits that we have in place right now are from 1996. And I mentioned here also, because I've been in touch with Millis about this previously, that there was an article published just yesterday by the industry where they essentially said that there's a reason why we haven't seen all these new towers go up for the 5G installation. And basically what it says is that the reason carriers didn't deploy 500,000 small cells is because they used new spectrum, faster cellular networks, and Wi-Fi. So the exposures in communities have increased without the towns necessarily even being aware of it, because the providers have changed the way that they're using their equipment. And I gave you a list of some of the towns, and I can email this to you so you can get to the hyperlinks, that are fighting with this. But one of the things that people are doing is requiring annual recertifications so that they know what's going on with the infrastructure in their communities, as well as adding additional insurance requirements, additional bond, and things like that. So none of these faster spectrum, faster networks were in use when the 1996 guidelines were established. So I felt this was just sort of a small step that the town could take to raise the question. I mentioned in here also, it's been reported, as I said, extensively in the Berkshires, but there are a number of proposed laws in the state legislature about radio frequencies this session. And one of them is by Senator Michael Moore. He is from the Worcester district. Now, Worcester is really sensitized to this issue because it was the site of the National Grid Smart Meter Pilot Program. Eversource and National Grid are poised to replace all of the smart meters in their service territories, which will include Millis. And he added an emergency preamble to his bill, which helped me kind of change the wording in mine, and that's why I put the word immediate. He says, whereas the deferred operation of this act would tend to defeat its purpose, which is to maintain public health, therefore it is hereby declared to be an emergency law necessary for the immediate preservation of public health. We've been trying to pass the smart meter opt-out bill in Massachusetts for 10 years. One of the physicians, I did not write about this, but the issue of electromagnetic hypersensitivity, there's a conflict of law between the ADA and the FCC's intention to keep growing the health of the wireless industry instead of taking care of health. But there is research on electrical sensitivity. One of the primary physicians is Beatrice Golem from California. She was very involved in investigation of the Havana syndrome. And the national documentation shows very clearly that the installation of the smart meters is the most frequently cited variable that leads to electromagnetic hypersensitivity. So we're very pleased that Senator Moore has worked so hard on this bill, but we have not had good luck at the State House with the Telecom Committee. So that's one of the reasons why I have contacting the legislature on the list of people for you to contact.
If I may, just to summarize, the petition, citizens petition asks that if this were to pass at town meeting, that the voters would ask the select board to communicate with our town representatives, which are from multiple districts, about the urgency. And so, and you've actually included a draft of that in quotes at the bottom.
Yeah, I think in a couple of towns there have been some modification because I think some of the citizens petitions, they just wanted to ban 5G, so once it went through the legal department, there were some modifications, but I was under the impression that once I submitted it, it couldn't be modified, but I'm definitely open to having it changed if there's something that needs to be adjusted.
I guess my really only question is, what do you think that this, first off, I admire your effort and certainly your knowledge. You seem extremely knowledgeable of this. What do you think this achieves that citizens not voting on this in other words, why do you feel a citizen's petition was required and prudent versus, you know, a letter that you crafted and that you went from door to door and just sent that with citizens' signatures on it? I mean,
Well, I've seen again, I'm looking at the Berkshire's paper, but they're talking about how many towns are tackling the wireless issues and basically saying we need guidance from the state and the federal government. And it seems like going through a citizen's petition through the town would be stronger. There have been so many petitions and so many, just like 5G appeals and things nationally and internationally that we haven't quite, made it. And I guess this is also a way of informing more of the residents in Millis of the issue. I don't know, how many people here work for the telecom industry or whatever, who aren't going to be interested in this, but I do find as people realize that there are controversies about the health, they want to be able to be connected, but they also want to be protected. And right now, most people just assume that if this stuff is being sold, it's safe, and people are learning about 5G from television ads. So,
are you willing to come back if we have follow-up questions in the next several weeks?
oh, sure. I'm not an expert, but I can do as much as I can, so I'm happy to help.
Any questions for Ms. Burke from the board, from the committee?
Yeah, I have one. This is a very complicated issue. How could you put together one paragraph that convinces a layperson that they should vote for this?
Yeah, it's hard because, people like their phones and we don't want to trigger them and, feel that they're threatened about that. But I think the fact that some of the other towns are doing it as well, kind of we're referencing each other.
I'm not sure that will pull much sway in Millis. We're pretty independent, so you need a compelling reason
Yeah.
that a layperson can understand for this to stand a chance. And if it's not going to stand a chance, it's going to be harder for me personally to endorse it.
Yeah. I'm open if there's
That
other
makes sense.
directions and, other ways to move forward with it.
Just
but-
simplify the explanation so it's a layperson's understanding as opposed to somebody who's researched it as much as you've researched it.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, sometimes when we know so much about something,
Mm-hmm.
we are talking at a level that the layperson doesn't understand.
Yeah.
Well, unless there's I was going to close with, Mr. Stedman kind of hit on it, that I don't speak for the board right now. We will discuss this, provided that it's still on the warrant. I see no reason why it wouldn't be by the time we get there. Historically, though, the Finance Committee has supported virtually all citizens' petitions because it's part of it. It's part of the process where the citizens can bring something to the committee and to the town. So, whether we agree with the merits of it or not, it's up for the town to decide. And we'll make a recommendation on it. And to his point, I would just, and to Ms. Boyardi's point, is to just be prepared that, you'll be the one making you'll certainly get an opportunity, provided that the moderator recognizes you, and I fully anticipate he will. So you'll get an opportunity to speak to town meeting. Probably sounds like nothing you haven't experienced before.
Oh, no, this is totally new.
And one of us will also likely be initiating the discussion comments at town meeting. So anyway, unless there's any questions, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you for sitting through all the other things. It's a lot for you to sit through.
Okay, Carol provided there's been a couple actually emails, one from Mr. McAvoy, or McVeigh, do I have that right? McAvoy, sorry, thank you. And also from Ms. Johnston, so if that, I don't see it here, we'll make sure that that gets sent to you and is included in meeting materials for next week on Oak Grove and some of the questions that were asked last week. So we'll skip by that one. Mr. Kaczynski has provided an attachment here with draft article list. I don't know that we need to go into much in-depth to discuss it. It is, as I anticipated it would be, in terms of there are regular items on there for operating budget, unpaid bills, additional wages and expenses, operating budget for both the town, and then the enterprise funds. The consent agenda is standard, capital items is standard. It appears that we're getting into a bit of a tradition or practice of including sidewalks and tree removal as separate warrant items, 9 and 10. I'm maybe a little bit surprised to see a general bylaw on powers and duties of the town administrator, because it appears that that keeps coming up.
Yep.
I don't know if something was missed last time around, so we can anticipate some discussion on that. Number 12 is new to me, the established Millis net zero goal, so we'll get some discussion on that going forward. Amendment of the plastic bag reduction bylaw, that's new. And then the last 5 there, actually number 16, the Special Education Stabilization Fund, would be something new to me. So this is apparently from the last select, when they have their draft warrant. So we'll have discussion on that. Mr. Kaczynski will be here next week to present his budget, and we'll also go over those. Which is a good segue into board and committee liaison updates. I'd ask that Mr. Lohr give us a rundown by exception of capital planning committee proceedings.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So we've had 2 meetings for the capital planning committee. We have about 14 different capital requests. A few are from the DPW, such as a dump truck, traffic light cabinet, one of the intersections, 10-ton trailer. We heard from library tonight. They referenced the Phase 2 lighting as a capital improvement.
How much is that?
$110,000.
Sorry, asked.
Sorry, just going through here. School items, data center upgrades and servers, wireless upgrade, town HVAC system with the Veteran Memorial building here, and a few other DPW requests, and one from Council on Aging for a new vehicle for transportation. So where we are right now is we've isolated the requests, and we've heard from, last week we heard from library and Mike with the VMB, and this week, and I think 2 weeks ago was the DPW. So we're going through the list right now, prioritizing those and discussing those. One thing that was outside of this that we talked about was the role of the CPC committee in terms of being more of an evaluator than a recommender, recommendation to the select board of what should be used for capital improvements and what not should be. So we are going through a slight upgrade of the bylaws for the CPC. So have about 13 or so items to review, and that's what we're going to be doing starting tomorrow.
What's the total ticket of the 13 items? Do you know the sum of that?
Ooh,
Do you really want to know?
I do now.
this is an informal number.
Likely.
1.1 million.
And are any of those requirements, were any of them not previously on the schedule of requirements that, there's a 10, 20, 30 year, it goes way out to the right? Were any of them not on it at all? And maybe they got pulled to the left a little bit, ahead of the theoretical schedule? Any surprises?
Great question. So, the VMB building here, one of the capital improvements is the stairs out front. That's a $150,000 request that has been pushed out to 2025 for now. So, as of now, outside of that, I think the Council on Aging Vehicle Transportation moved out to 2025 as well. The rest are 2024, fiscal year 2024. And then, to be determined in terms of other things will be pushed outside the 1-year mark. What we're trying to do right now is to determine, for lack of better words, a short, medium, and a long-term needs. And the longer the time frame goes, the more fictitious the numbers become in terms of what's actually needed. So we're trying to understand what is best for the budget over a 10-year period, and then beyond that. Does that answer your question?
Okay, it does.
Okay.
Any other questions for John? Did anybody else attend any of the public meetings this week that they want to?
Yes, I just want to say, March 17th is the community preservation meeting that I'm a non-voting member of, so I'll be able to report something then.
Okay, all right, thank you.
I went Monday evening to the select board, and then Sarah and I both went last evening to the school committee, and it was quite eye-opening.
Why?
Well, apparently there is a 1.7, almost $1.8 million deficit.
Yep.
They are looking to cut anywhere between 22 and 26 teachers, staff members.
Full-time employees.
Full-time employees.
Which equals to about, just saying that they're teachers, that would be 2 teachers per grade.
So they honestly have never seen anything like this ever. The 1.4, almost 1.5 is special ed specific. There was not apparently, and I asked, Sarah and I were talking, our students K through 12 are going to be suffering because there's no money for this, to keep the staff. But there's an increase in the special ed budget, and there's, you know, the special ed is taking all the money. And I, as a citizen, it concerns me that all our money, that's where our money is going, and our school-age children, K through 12, are going to be the ones to, you know, I think the state needs to do something about it, basically. I think that they can't continue expecting us to have this kind of money going out and not give us something for our own, the K through 12. But to lose 26 staff members is a huge impact.
It basically would not only change, say, class sizes to possibly 35 kids per class, it would also eliminate and limit the types of courses that could be taken in high school and middle school. It's just, basically, it would really devastate both buildings.
Right.
And
I'm curious if they were equating the budget deficit to positions, or were they still going through, I mean, they only have, as they
actually went through.
discussed, as they discussed in the tri-board meeting, you know, there's only so many paper clips they can cut out of their expense budget to get to.
No, Terry did a really good job of presenting everything, as far as, he tried to make it so that there was, you know, he put in if the town could give X amount, which I think was $335,000.
it's basically heads. It's basically heads are what they would need to cut. There's only so much that they can cut. But to get to the number, to get to the almost 1.8 million would be 26 heads.
Okay.
And there was really no other discussion about it. And it's just, depending upon how much money they would be able to receive, it's just how many less heads they would need to cut.
Yeah, no, Terry was really good about, you know, he put everything down and said, okay, this is what if we eliminate this para, if we eliminate this para, if we eliminate this teacher, this teacher, this teacher.
Okay.
The principal of the high school presented prior to this a request for some really remarkable courses that he proposes to offer. It's not going to impact the budget, but so the school committee approved a curriculum change. And it's not costing anything, it's just a curriculum change. But then when the school committee, or when Terry presented everything, I'm concerned how they're going to be able to teach all of these courses if we're cutting 26 heads.
Okay, all right. It will certainly color the context of, all of our deliberations and discussions on whatever the final budget looks like, so.
I have a
I think it's
question, if I
important
may.
that we, yeah.
Is this $1.8 million, does this include the circuit breaker funding from last year? Because we were told we were gonna get a number in the fall of 2022.
From what I understand, this included the circuit breaker money.
I think they said circuit breaker was 500?
Yeah, 500.
So it was really 2.3 was their deficit before
Yeah,
the service.
they said Delta was 1.8. They said about 1.8. So I assume that was
That was
after
after the
circuit
circuit
breaker.
So after the circuit breaker, so when we're talking about real numbers here, there were actually $2.3 million in the hole.
I wouldn't, if I were you, personally, I'm not gonna take that to the bank till I hear from him, because
That's why,
at the.
Mr. Chair, I
Because
love
at
this,
the,
but
if I
it's-
may, because at the tri-board, they said 1.3, so if it was 1.8 and there's 500,000.
Well, it was
in separate.
1.4. It was,
It almost doesn't matter.
Right.
Really, there's no
no, I
reason to
know, I'm
get.
just saying that this is what was presented last night.
Yeah.
We're not making
Yeah.
the
I think
stories
that
up,
was-
Understand.
we're just
Okay.
telling you
Yeah,
what we
yeah.
saw
I
and
think it was-
heard.
All right, how about,
Motion to adjourn?
you said no, we're not ready yet. I won't take a motion.
Deidre wants something.
Deirdre, go ahead.
Right, so I just wanted to make you aware that on, March 14th, the, school, committee or department is holding a public hearing in the library at 7 PM to discuss the FY '24 budget. I think that's kind of pertinent for you guys.
Is that a Tuesday?
It is a Tuesday, yeah.
So we may post a meeting of our own on that day, at that time, at that place, just so that we can, and we'll be in touch, but I would say that it would be prudent for, a number of reasons to hear it firsthand, not to participate, unless you want to speak as a individual, but just so that we can have quorum and be there, so.
The other thing is the superintendent is going to present this to both schools next Monday.
On the 20, you said the 20. They're right, next Monday. so-
Next Monday. They're going to present it to the high school first, and middle school, high school, and then they're going to present it to the elementary school teachers, so that they're aware of what's going on.
Okay. You said you also attended which one?
Board of Selectmen, Select Board,
Okay,
yeah.
all right.
And they basically covered what we're covering now. I mean,
Okay.
everyone's, yeah. They did approve the chief's charges for the fees. They did approve the increase in fees, ambulance fees and stuff.
All right, I don't know if the select board is meeting next week. I suspect that they're not, but maybe they are. So I don't know, if we need to ask anybody to volunteer to attend or to go to the committee meeting, or school committee or the select board meeting. So, I would encourage us to go to those meetings individually, and then we'll have an opportunity to pass on information. Not everybody agrees with that, and I'll ask you to speak on it if you.
Well, no, I would rather hear, Mr. Chair, from the parties, and I can appreciate the intense notes that our colleagues took, but I just, my own personal opinion, thank you.
Well, how different is that if you go to a meeting and you report to us?
Through the chair, I don't think I went as a citizen to the meetings, and I'm only concerned with the Finance Committee, which is before the Finance Committee when they present. And also, if I might bring back about the cell tower, can I talk about? Maybe we should write to the planning board to see what their conditions are when they impose, when they grant a cell tower, or the selectmen, because when I was on the planning board, they were checked every year, that the applicant had to come back. I don't know if that's done anymore,
Sure.
but perhaps we should see what the town is already proactively doing.
Sure. So the planning board, I'm not sure that they're gonna present the budget to us, actually. I think I saw them on here. Yeah, they are. Nope, that's capital planning committee. Okay, so we'll ask them to come in and,
Well, not come in,
prior
they
to
could
the
just
vote.
just write a letter and say,
You don't want to see
this is
them?
what, no, I don't want to impose on a volunteer more.
All right, okay. We'll do that.
Thank you. I can work with Deirdre on that.
If more than 5 members are planning to attend the school committee hearing, you let me know. and-
Deirdre? Deirdre, we'll post a meeting. If we don't have quorum, then we don't have to worry about it. There will officially be no meeting convened. So post it to coincide, same place, same time. We can attend, and if we don't have quorum, then the meeting won't be convened, and it will be like it never happened. So that way, you have it, you're not doing it last minute, waiting for who's gonna attend or whatever. Okay?
It's March 14th,
Yep.
and will that be at the library? The school
You
library?
went to the meeting, you tell them. We'll-
No, I mean,
I think they said yes, but if there's gonna be a lot of people attending, they might move it to the auditorium.
We'll,
Yeah. Right.
we'll keep our ear to the ground, we'll find out.
Yep.
Could I ask Mr. Lohr a question?
Absolutely.
I've looked at a couple of other towns, and they call it the CAPCOM, Capital Committee. I know Mr. Berube into the FinCom, and it was always CAPCOM. CPC, I thought you were talking about the CPC.
We have two CPCs.
We have too many
So let's
CPCs.
go with ask your chair if you could go with CAPCOM.
Capcom, sure. Is that okay, Chair?
DEF CON.
DEFCON.
Doesn't matter to me.
Concom, now we have Capcom.
Okay, we're now starting to get punchy. We need to wrap this up. We have a couple of meeting minutes. Sorry, before I get to that, just check the schedule there for upcoming meetings. Add the 14th, so there's a handout with upcoming meetings. School committee on the 29th is awful late in the process, so I'm gonna try to ask for them to, well, given that we're adding the 14th, that kinda placates me a little bit, that we'll hear from them and we'll know exactly where they're headed with this prior to the 29th, so,
Yeah. I
there you
think
go. Okay,
Give them time to do some public presentations
Right.
and then
right.
present their budget.
Okay, so we have some meeting minutes to review and potentially approve.
Mr. Chair,
Ms. Garzon?
I move that we approve the minutes of the tri-board meeting of February 15th as written.
Second, it's been moved and seconded that the committee vote to approve minutes as written for the tri-board meeting on February 15th. There were 6 members in attendance. All those in favor, say aye. Aye. Any nays? Any abstentions? So we have 1 abstention from Mr. Crone. We have who else is missing? Mr. Stedman is abstaining,
I'll be abstaining as well.
and Mr. Underhill is abstaining. Okay, Deirdre, got that? Okay, whoever's not listed has abstained, so we didn't violate anything. All right, that wraps it up. I'll
Move
take
we
a.
adjourn.
Been moved and
Second.
seconded that we adjourn. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Thank you, Deirdre.